All right. 75% of the people said that they could hear me. I'm going to presume. Excuse me. I'm going to share the desktop here. Can you see my screen now? Yep. All right. Well, welcome everybody. I think we have everybody on board right now that we will have between now and noon. So let's go ahead and get started. This is the CRM best practices on workflows, creating workflows in CRM 2011. It also works for 4.0 as well. We're going to be going through this process to get Dave for everybody. So now, one of the things about etiquette for the webinar, what I'm going to ask you to do is, if you have questions, please go ahead and go into the question area in the webinar and ask the question. Stephen Jennings is joining me right now. He's a senior implementer here at Affiliate Resource Group. He's going to be monitoring the question area to make sure that we can answer the questions as they go forward. I have everybody muted so that we can actually not be interrupted by music and coughing and all the other fun stuff that we've had in the past. So I'm going to go ahead and continue on. First of all, the agenda of the introductions. I'll be going to introduce myself. I'll also introduce Stephen. He was originally going to be doing this presentation. We had some client issues, and I took it over, but at last minute he's here, so I'll be continuing with it. Then what we're going to do is go through what are workflows. You know, it's kind of fun to even discuss what is a workflow. Then we're going to do some polls because I want to know how you guys are using the system and who's on the phone call, so I can actually tailor this training more towards the people that in the audience that we have. The next thing is that I'm going to go over workflow best practices. And then I'm going to create a simple workflow and then create a multi-level workflow. So moving on, oh yes, forgot the last thing. That would be Q&A for questions and answers. So moving on, introduction. Again, my name is William Owens. I've been with Affiliate for 16 years, 17 years now. I've sort of lost track. Been working with Microsoft Dynamics CRM implementations for the past 8 or 9 years, since 2004. I've worked with 1.2, 3.0, 4.0, online on-prem, 2011 online and on-prem as well. So I have quite a few of these wonderful experiences underneath my belt. A whole bunch of the battle scars, which really came out from 1.2. Then you'll also find out, if you've dealt with me before, I'm pretty much a very strong CRM advocate. I live and breathe Microsoft Dynamics CRM. I love it. I think it's a great thing. It's a wonderful way to help companies increase their bottom line. I also have a blog out there. We're in the middle of moving it over, so it's a little bit static at the moment, but it is still out there on CRM. Then moving on, let's talk about what are workflows. Well, in my past talking with customers, I found out that people tend to have a problem even articulating what is a workflow. So I'm going to tell you what workflows are in CRM. In CRM, it's CRM logic that you create to accomplish some type of action within CRM. It's basically a component of like a macro in Excel, or just a component of logic that you need to happen. The real problem comes into play is that in business today, we talk holistically about workflow, and part of that workflow process is people actions. CRM will handle computer logic actions, but not people actions. So there's a whole big portion of people actions on top of that. Now, you can track some of the people actions by having them do tasks. So you assign them a task. When they're done with it, they click, they're done with it. Then you can track the computer logic from there on, but you can't say, well, fill out these forms, 5 forms, and just handhold them through it. That's part of the business process. The CRM workflows will handle the computer side of it. But what can be done? It can be done based upon data creation, data modification, or manual process. What I mean by that is, whenever you create a record, you can go out and check for something and say, send an email. You can also say, whenever a field changes on the screen, check with workflow and figure out if you need to do something. Like if the opportunity went over $50,000, send out an email. Okay, manual process is just that. Allow people to kick off workflow by hand. Workflows, they can be extended with custom coding, both on-prem and online. That's when the developers we have would open up Visual Studio and crank out some custom code. to make it do things that it just doesn't do out of the box. So just because it can't do it out of the box doesn't mean it cannot happen. We can code around that. Now the other thing about workflows, you can get into trouble fast. It's real easy when you first start out to get lured in by the ease of creating workflows, the ease of which you can put things together, and before long you have the spaghetti network of chaos. Okay, so you can get into trouble very fast and very quickly. So moving on, workflow best practices, polls. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a couple questions here. I just want to see who's doing what in the system. My first one is, have you attended any of our previous webinars in the past? I'm going to give a minute here for people to answer this one. All right, I'm going to close the poll out. I want to share it with everybody. It looks like right now, as we look at this, I have 70% of people new to our workflow best practices. Hey, glad to see you guys are coming in as new. I do have a lot of people that do come back to multiple ones. So the next question I want to ask, are you guys currently a CRM administrator, someone who actually works with the system to get it to extend past the normal items like creating workflows, creating fields in the system, changing views? All right, I'm going to give another 10 seconds and then close this one. All right, well, that was a fast 10 seconds. I'm trying to get through this thing for everybody. It looks like 85% of the people on board here today are administrators, people who are in the CRM system, which is good because this is geared more towards you. And the other 15%, please bear with me as we go through it because it's something new. And if we need to follow up with any other training, let me know and we can do that. One other question for the administrators that are on here. Have you ever created workflows before? All right, closing it. And I'm going to share it. Looks like 67% of people have created them before. That's good. 33%. When you see this stuff, it's easy. Just be careful. You can get in trouble fairly quickly. All right, so I'm going to move on right now to the rest of the webinar. So we're going to go a little bit further and talk about the best practices. What are the best practices? First of all, we'll send out to everybody who's shown up today this this PDF of our best practice sheet. A lot of people get a little confused when we start talking about best practices. What are best practices? Well, frankly, best practices, if you get down to it, are lessons learned. If you're a PM, basically at the end of every project, you go, what went right, what went wrong, and with what went wrong, how do we not go through that pain again? So best practices are usually leftovers, remnants of lessons learned. To say, how do we get not to do that problem again? How do we make sure that we can do things better in the future? And so in a general sense, best practices are nothing more than recommendations for how to keep yourself from getting into trouble. All right, so with that said, you're going to find out a lot of best practices. We'll start out with naming conventions. In my naming conventions, what we talk about with naming conventions is we type in the word entity. When we start naming our workflows, we go entity hyphen a group hyphen like E99. What that means is which email, and I'll talk about that in a second, and then the description. Now, some of these are optional. So like if I'm working on an opportunity and I'm doing like the sales process and it's the send out stage 1 tasks, what I would probably end up doing is typing in opportunity hyphen sales process hyphen stage 1. And that way it's going to group it in by the entity as well as the group function, sales process, and then the description tells me basically what it is. Now the E99 that you do, E99 or T99 if you're doing tasks. Okay, and I'll talk about that in a minute here, but use this type of naming convention to help organize your workflows. When you have one or two workflows in the system, it's not a big deal. Name them whatever you want. But what I'm going to tell you is later on when you start adding them into it and you get this hodgepodge of naming, it becomes extremely difficult to find what you're looking for or to understand what things are related. And so this naming convention helps us with that. And a lot of people go, why are you putting the entity name up front? Because I have to pick what entity the workflow is on. Well, that's great while you're editing it. But when you look at system jobs or you look in audit logs, you look at other places, the only thing you get is the name. Trying to get back to the entity is actually somewhat difficult and time consuming. So it's best practice just put the entity name in up front. It also groups it for you. It makes it easier to find things later on. Now, with the thing about the E99, one thing is I'm going to jump on down here. I'll actually talk about that in a second with the E99 and T99. The next thing I want you to think about is burn a CRM account for your CRM admin. I know a lot of people go, wait a minute, I got 10 users. What, you tell me I have to buy 11? Yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you to do. If you have 10 users, buy 11 users. Have one of them burned for a CRM admin account. Have one account that controls everything, and everybody else is a little bit different. The reason for this is twofold. First of all, if you're doing security, and I hope you're applying security to your system, you usually like take away delete from everybody else. So you're going to burn a best practices for security is to burn an account anyway. So there's several of my best practices tells you to actually have an administrative account set up already. Now the other thing is you want to have all the workflows owned and published by the administrative account. Why is that? Well, Bob can go into the system and create his own workflows and make it for the organization. But let's just say Bob's my my administrative, my CRM admin, but he's not the CRM admin account. It's Bob's account. So Bob does 15 different workflows for me, and then you know what? He finds another job and he leaves. Well, he owns all those workflows. So the problem comes into play when you have people come and go. So you really want one account that's never going to leave the system to own all the workflows. Okay, so moving on. Create separate workflows for emails and tasks. Let me try that one more time. Create separate workflows for emails and tasks. And what I mean by that is in Microsoft Dynamics CRM workflows, you can actually, in the middle of one workflow, kick off another workflow. And it's that other workflow I want to do the actual email. There are several different reasons, especially if you're in 4.0. In 4.0, if your email failed, your whole workflow failed. And it was really hard to recover from. They fixed that in 2011, which is nice, but it's still still good to pull out all your workflows because your emails and your workflows, because here's the deal. Usually you're doing it more than once. Usually you're doing it 3 or 4 times. And once you get into the Microsoft CRM workflows, you're going to find out that there's no copy, there's no paste, there's no Control-Z, there's no undo, and we'll be talking about that in a few minutes, but it's not very forgiving. And I don't know about you, but once I get one email up and running, I don't like to do it again and again and again and duplicate it. Then it makes it hard to find it. Now, the other side of it is, this goes back to the naming conventions, is that, like, let's say I had the sales process, I was sending out welcome to affiliated as part of the sales process once we have an opportunity created. Well, I would name that one opportunity hyphen sales process hyphen E01 because it's my very first email within the entities, the entity opportunity, okay? And then what I would do is hyphen send welcome aboard email. So again, it'd be opportunity hyphen sales process hyphen E01 hyphen send welcome aboard. That's how I would name it. But moreover, when you're actually creating the workflow of the email message in a category and subcategory, and again, I will show you this in a little bit, I would actually put in the word workflow, opportunity in category and subcategory, I'd put opportunity hyphen E01. And the reason for that is when you send an email in workflow, it'll go out and it'll have that. But a lot of times it's like 6 months from now, you come back, someone will come in and say, hey Bill, would you go in there and please change the verbiage on this? We forgot a period here, or we need to change something about this email. Well, when you have 15 emails scattered from here to everywhere inside of the workflows, finding them is chaotic. However, if we put the workflow out and we have one for each email, or logic email sent, sometimes you can have those workflows with multiple ones because it could be to an account or a contact. But that grouping that would send out an email would be in one workflow, and with that E01 or E02 in it, you would be able to find it fairly quickly when you're going to go modify it. This has actually saved me a boatload of time in the past, because what will happen is the person will say, oh, I need to change that email. You say, show me. And they go into CRM and they show you the email. And what you're doing is really looking down the bottom and find out which workflow is it really coming from. All right? The other thing is that we want to purge the log files. Oh, my. Microsoft did a really good job on this by giving us logging. Workflows, it logs everything. You can find out when each one of the line items in the workflow executed, what their status was, what happened, if it created anything, it'll keep track of that. It creates and tracks everything. I'm emphasizing the word everything because that is a lot of data. One log file represents quite a bit of data. When I first got to 4.0 and I had one of my customers up and running on this thing, before there was any purging capabilities to the log files, within 3 months they called me up. They had 5 gigs of real data in their database and 80 gigs of workflow logs. That is a lot. And they had 3 million log entries, but 80 gig. Anybody here who's an admin on the database automatically is going to sit here and go, oh, that is not good. And you know what? It wasn't. Getting it all purged out and everything took about a day and a half. We had some downtime. Not fun. Purge the log files. Now, the way that you purge your log files is in CRM 2011. It's fairly simplistic. You go to the second tab, go down the bottom, it says delete this when it's done completed. Now, it will keep the log file out there if there's an error. It's only going to purge it if it completed normally. In 4.0, if you're using 4.0, there's a registry entry that you probably put in there that just purges them automatically for everybody when they complete normally. I hope your partner put that on for you, or you did it to yourselves. Otherwise, you probably have a lot of extra data in your database. But in 4.0, it's just global for everybody. In 2011, we now can choose which workflows to do that to, which is good because sometimes there are some workflows that you do want to keep the audit log to. Okay. It looks like we have a question on the poll. What's the question, Stephen?
We have 2 questions. First one's from Kathy. She wants the blog address posted at the end. So we'll do that. Second one Eddie had is, can you change the owner of an existing workflow? I find this field grayed out, and it would be nice to transfer existing workflows to a CRM admin account.
All right. The 2 questions are, first of all, to show the blog. At the end, I'll put the blog out there. Everybody will be followed up with an email from here. And in that email, we'll also put the blog entry in there along with our attachment for this best practice. Now, the other question is, okay, there's workflows out there owned by someone else, and it's grayed out. How do I take care of that? What you can do is you have to unpublish it and then take ownership of it and then republish it. So you'd sign in as a CRM admin, go out there, look at all the workflows that you have published that you want to move on over, highlight them all, unpublish. I'd probably do this after hours, by the way. Unpublish, and then change the assignment to yourself, or since you're signed in as a CRM admin, when they're all set over, then you just go and publish them. So it is a little bit of a step process to get it done, but it's not that difficult. But yeah, you can unpublish one as administrator. You can't publish as someone else, though. So yeah, if Bob owns it and I'm the CRM admin, I can unpublish it, but I can't republish it.
Yeah, and also when you change owners, it will automatically be unpublished.
I've done that several times, but 4.0 it doesn't do it that way.
Oh, 2011 it does.
Yes, that's why I was trying to stay away from that one. But yeah, there's a couple different ways to do that one. Did that answer your question?
That was from Eddie.
Eddie? I'm going to take silence as consent, and we're going to move on.
Said yes, thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. So another thing is minimize wait state. And frankly, guys, I don't care if you're on-prem or online, do this anyway. On-prem, absolutely do this. Online, don't go, well, that's Microsoft's problem. I've got news for you. It's your problem too, because you're sharing the environment with other people. But what I'm talking about is minimizing wait state. Let me give you an example of a really, really bad idea. I want to send out an email to my salespeople whenever one of their contacts has a birthday. So I want to put a workflow out there saying, wait for that birthday, wait for the birthday, wake up, and there's some other things you have to do for this one, but wait for that birthday. So April 20th, I wake up and I send Stephen an email saying, hey, this is Bill's birthday, and it's not, so don't send me any emails. So it's Bill's birthday, and lets him know that, hey, you might want to call Bill and say, hey, happy birthday. That sounds great, and everybody sort of wants something like that. But the problem is if I have 30,000 email contacts in the system, I have 30,000 workflows waiting all the time. What does that mean? It means every minute or so, Microsoft CRM wakes up in the background and goes, what should I be looking at? And there's 30,000 things that goes, is this one okay? Is this one still waiting? Is this one still waiting? And it's okay when you have like 5,000 of them, but, or actually 5,000 is a little stretch, but when you have a smaller amount of them, you don't notice that. But when you have a boatload of them, like 30,000, your CRM async services are going to go pegging through the roof. Okay, it will cause you some headache and heartache on your CRM server if you have a lot of things in a wait state. So the idea is to minimize the wait state. So translation for that is, well, don't do the contact thing I just told you about. Bad idea. But here's where people tend to fall into some issues where you can actually improve some of your performance. Case management, when you're doing instances of issues. So you're using case processing and you're trying to write a case management workflow that says, wait 1 week after the case has been created, wake up and find out, has it been resolved? If it hasn't, send an email to my manager. Well, that's a standard type of approach to case management. However, what I would suggest you do is have the workflow on create, wake up 1 day later and go, has it been completed? If yes, stop. If not, wait another day. Wake up, has it been completed? If so, stop. Else, wait another day. And so you'll have a lot of little steps in here, but what's going to happen is I've talked with other customers, and like they have this weak escalation path, but we actually get it done within a day or two. And we have about 30, 40 issues a week that we're dealing with. Well, that starts adding up if you think about it. And you also have a whole bunch of things just waiting all the time, and that number grows, whereas it should have been getting out of the queue 1 to 2 days into it instead of taking a whole 7 days for every one of them. Okay, that's a lot of extra work for your CRM server to do. So minimize your wait state. Another question?
Yeah, we have one more question regarding about the log files.
Okay.
Do we have the same problem in log files in CRM 4.0?
Oh, yes.
So I guess you also want to emphasize about the registry change.
Yes, there is a registry change for 4.0 that it's in one of the roll-ups. I forget which one it is because it's been a while. I think it's like roll-up 4, 5 for CRM 4. There's a registry entry in there as a manual thing that you have to do. And on the registry entry, you say just purge all completed log files. If you Google out there for purging async logs in 4.0, you will find these registry entries.
Let's talk about the difference between the two. It's for everything. 2011, you can pick and choose.
Right. The other thing is that in 4.0, it's everything. You don't get a checkbox to choose. It's everything in 4.0 gets purged if it's completed normally. And if you're in 4.0, I suggest you have that turned on, and unless you can argue profusely why not to. That's one of those things that you need. It's like innocent until proven guilty. you need that thing turned off until you can prove otherwise. All right?
Good.
Minimize wait state. Now, if I have any developers in the room, bear with me on this next one, because I'm going to tell you something that you're going to shake your head at and say, that's not right. And what I want you to do is keep your logic flat and end it quickly. Do not do good coding standards and nest your logic to the nth degree. And so if you're a developer in the room, you'll know what I mean. Like say, if this, else this, and an else if inside of there, and another if, and you start nesting it out to the right. And when you're developing in real languages, that's the right way to do it. CRM workflow is not a real language. It may look like it. It may fool you into it, but it is not a real language. And the reason I want you to get in and out quickly, keep logic flat, is because it's extremely difficult to redo logic inside of CRM. And what I mean by that is, let's say I had an if statement and I nested it, and there's like 40 statements between the beginning and the end of that if. If I delete that if statement, everything between the beginning and end disappears. Do not pass go, do not collect $200, it's gone. All right, there's no control Z, no undo, and your day is not very pleasant at that point in time. Okay, so with that said, what I usually recommend you do before you start moving along workflows around is, create a solution. If you're in 2011, add the workflow to it, export it off so you have a backup copy of your workflow before you go monkey around with it. If you're in 4.0, you can just go to it and export the single workflow into a zip file and have it backed up that way. But when you have a lot of complicated workflows you're getting ready to mess with, make a backup copy of them. The next, another question?
Yeah, when you get a second.
All right, we'll get that question in a second. But just make the backup copy, and then that way if you do make a mistake, because again, when you're editing in the workflow, once you come off that line, it's saved immediately to the database whether you hit the save button or not. And so that's why I'm saying keep the logic flat, end it quickly, and because if you the further to the left you keep it, the easier it is to insert new logic above and around it or delete individual items without causing problems. So what was the question?
Okay, this one's from Ashton Smith.
All right, Ashton.
With regards to wait state, how does a workflow handle if the state is already passed before it launches? Say if I wait 3 days from X days, when I put in a new activity and it's only 2 days until the end, will it see that I've passed the do this 3 days before and go ahead and kick it off?
Let me read that one real quick.
Sure.
Just a second while I read that one, because there's a lot to that one. With regards to the wait state, how does a workflow handle if the state is already passed before it launches? Say if wait 3 days from X date, when I put in a new activity and it's only 2 days until the end. All right. Well, Ashton, what happens is in workflow is you tell it to wake up at a certain time. So you say wait 2 days after this date. And if it's on date modified, if the date modified changes, it'll change the effective wake-up state, okay, date and time. And if it goes past it, it automatically it'll wake up and fire, okay. But the wait state is based upon a date, and you can also apply before or after timing events to it as well. But it does wake up every now and then and checks to see if it's time to fire off. So if there's something in the wait state and the event is met or exceeded, it will actually fire it off. I believe that's what you're asking for. If not, we may want to take this one offline, and because it's a little bit more complicated to discuss.
Okay.
All right. Put that one back.
Okay.
Any other questions so far? Nope. All right. So moving on, let's go into a demo. What we need to do right now is we need an opportunity that will send an email to an owner if the owner of the account, if the opportunity is over 50K. Sorry, I can't even read my own screen. So we need to send, need a workflow on an opportunity that will send an email to the owner if the opportunity is over 50K, and that's the owner of the account. So here's how we would do that. First of all, if you were paying attention, we will need two workflows, workflow 1 and workflow 2, one for the email. So the first thing I'm going to do is set up the email one, and I'm going to do it very simply by going to Settings and to Processes. Now, this demo environment that I'm looking at right now, I created this at 10:30 this morning. There's no changes to it. You can go out to CRM Online right now and sign up for a demo account, and you will get exactly what you see right here. I tend to like to do these things with completely out of the box, no tailoring, no customizations. So it is exactly what you will get when you go work with it. So I'm going to go to my processes and create a new process. And we're just going to call this E01 send big op email. So the entity will be opportunity. It's going to be a workflow. Dialogues are another session, by the way. So I'm going to do a new blank workflow. So the first thing I do when this workflow comes on up, it's a process. First thing I'm going to do, because frankly I don't like forgetting this, I go over to Administration, go way down to the bottom, and click Purge. Get rid of the log. Saves disk space. It should say to save a lot of disk space right here. All right, so I'm going to go back to General. The next thing I like to do is just change this to be organization. If you're in a large organization, you may have multiple levels of workflows, but 95% of all the people I've worked for only need organizational level workflows. Okay, and it's also very bad to have user-based workflow, because a lot of times people go, you know, this system absolutely hates me. I can guarantee you, you can make the system hate you if you have user-based workflow that only operates for you. So let's just do organizational. Then up front, I talked about different ways to kick things off. When a record's created or a field's changed. By the way, when a record status changes or a record's assigned or any fields change, these are all basically the same thing, waiting for a field to change on it. These just actually highlight the ones that are actually in the thing for you. So if I click status changes and record field changes and hit select, if I go through this process, we'll see that the status is already checked for me. That's all it's really doing. These extra boxes right here, all they're doing is checking some of those other fields for you. Or you can make it actually look for a specific field on the screen. So what I'm really going to do is this: I'm only going to do this for when the record's created, because I only want to send this out when the record's created. Oh, wait a minute, I'm almost messing up. This is my email one. I'm getting ready to do my email one, which is actually going to be a child process as well as an on-demand. And I'll show you why I'm going to do on-demand as well. So I'm going to add a step to this. The first step to do, if you're going to send this to a contact, check to see if the contact has an email. Now, this is going to go to the owner of the account. I know they already have an email, but I'm going to show you what I mean by this. First, check if owner has email, or whatever, email address. So what I'm going to do is do my check condition. So I'm going to say check where the opportunity account owner oops, I messed that up already. Delete that. Well, what I do is go check the email. Now, I was talking about it, but I'm going to actually save and close, get out of this one, and delete this thing off real quick. So I'm not quite ready to go show that one real quick. But what you do is you check to see if the workflow, the owner has an email address. If the owner does not have an email address, what you do is you send an email to the admin saying, go fix this and then rerun this workflow. And that way someone is going to get notified that there's a missing email address and they're going to fix it and then get back in and they can manually kick this thing off. But for purposes of the demo here, I'm also looking at, I'm going to run out of time if I do everything. I'm just going to go out here and just say create the record, or sorry, did it again. Create an email. Send an email right here. Now, a lot of people talk to me about this being a little bit crowded down here. You can get more room by hitting the little triangle box up here and getting it back. So I'm going to send an email to owner. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to say it's going to come from by whoever created the opportunity. It's going to go to the account owner. Large op, and I can put other fields in here. I can actually, as you can tell, customize and tailor this to say anything. I can insert fields like here's the opportunity. Put the name of the opportunity right there. We can also, by the way, insert a hyperlink straight to the opportunity by clicking insert hyperlink and put opportunity right there. Oops. So this will insert a hyperlink right to the opportunity. But before I get out of here, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go down here to category and subcategory and put workflow. This is my breadcrumbs to find this thing later. This is my breadcrumbs to find which email I need to edit later on. So I'm going to save and close because, again, that says opportunity E01 to let me know which one I'm going to do. Now I can activate this. And now I'm going to say create one on creation. So I'm going to create another email. If it's a big opportunity, send an email. Change it to organization. Go check, turn this thing off because I don't want all those log files. Now I'm all set up, ready to go. Get me some more space here so I can see. Add a new step and check the condition. And if opportunity is over 50K, so I'm going to go over here and say where opportunity estimated value revenue is greater than 50K. Now, bear in mind, I said if it's over, if I said it's equal to or over, I would use a different one. So if it's 50K or above, I would say if it's 50K or above, I'd say is equal to or greater than, is greater than or equal to 50,000. This would do it at 50K now. All right, so I'm going to hit save and close. Now what I can do is say, click down here and say, if it's over that, send the email. But the way I do the send the email is to start a child workflow. E01. Now this one's simple and done. I can hit save, and I can hit activate, hit OK. Both activated. So let me go to my sales right now and create an opportunity. And if you guys have not been on the new CRM system, this is the Metro look. It's quite entertaining. One thing I want us to talk about real quick before we get too much further on the Metro look is workflows and Metro look beware. Workflow and Metro look beware. And the reason I say that is as you come on and off things, it saves automatically to CRM. So a lot of times in the old workflows, we're assuming that all the data is being saved at one logical spot. Now, individual fields can get updated outside of the one field, the group of fields. And so you can run into some real serious issues with workflows if your logic is assuming that it's all done at one time. Question?
Yeah, we have a question. Can you go through the difference between a child process and an on-demand? What's the difference between child and on-demand?
A child process can only be, the question is what's the difference between child process and on-demand? A child process can only be executed by another workflow. An on-demand can be executed by an individual. Example being, let me get out of this and highlight this one order right here. I can go up here and say run a workflow, and I can hit this, the one I said send emails. And the reason is I had that said run on demand. However, that workflow also has run as a child. And that way I can run it from another workflow. Does that answer your question? All right.
That's it?
That's it? Okay.
Keep going. 20 minutes.
So I'm going to go back to the Metro look here and say I'll put this to any old opportunity account and budgeted amount, purchase amount. But as you can see up here, here's estimated budget. We're going to say $54,000. Hit the save button so I can save it. Now, according to this, workflow should have kicked off. So I can hit over here and see activities and see if any emails are being sent. But what I'm really going to do is, instead of confusing everybody, I'm going to go back to the classic look so that it's more like what everybody's used to seeing. So I'm going to go back to the classic look. And this is the old out-of-the-box look that everybody's used to seeing right now. So I'm just going to go back to this so we can see what's going on. And if I look under workflows, I can see workflows that we're currently running, but I'm waiting for those to occur. But in reality, I should be seeing an email being sent. And it will be out there in a few minutes. The other thing that you understand about workflows is that it takes anywhere from 10 seconds to a minute for it to actually occur in the background. It's like a queuing to a printer. So it will be sending the email out in the background. For purposes of getting a little bit further, I need to move on to my next one. And my next one is a little bit more complicated. And that is, we need a workflow that will send an email to an account owner if the opportunity is over 50K and the account is in the industry of consulting, and the opportunity purchase process is committee. Otherwise, if the purchase process is individual, create a task. What I'm trying to get at right here is this sometimes is what occurs in some of the processes where we have to check on 3 or 4 different things, and based upon there, we might do an email, we might do a task. So in general sense, what I'm going to do is I'm going to going back over here to the CRM system, go back to settings. I'm going to reuse that big opportunity one because I want to reuse that email, but I'm going to create another one. Opportunity consulting message. All right, so I'm going to save my opportunity here, make it a workflow. Now these workflows I'm making up right now are very generic, so because they work within the out of the box, but they can go any way. You can have a whole bunch of different ones, but what I'm trying to do is just show you how to leverage some of this stuff. So the first thing that I had inside of this is I want to check to see if it goes over 50K. So estimated revenue. So I'm checking for estimated revenue, and then I also need to check on purchase process from the opportunity as well. Purchase process. There it is, purchase process. So I'm checking those fields and on creation. Why am I doing both of them? One of the other disadvantages that people run into problems with Microsoft CRM is they say, okay, if this field changes, then do this. But when the record's created, there's no change. It is a new piece of data. And so what you have to do is if you want it on creation and as well as field change in a lot of situations, because you want to make sure that this occurs. Okay? So the first thing I want to do is start up my if statement. So first thing I'm going to check, say, if the purchase process or is not equal to individual or committee, get out of here because it doesn't really matter. So if purchase, whatever, purchase process, not committee, and I'm not spelling everything out, or individual. So now I'm going to do this if statement, and this is what I'm talking about for the programmers in the room, a bad logic. So you want to do this fairly quickly. Purchase process does not equal committee or individual. Now, again, the reason I'm saying not equal, we can add other fields to this. I just know that these are the two I need this thing to do. And so what I want to do is, if it's not equal to these two, I want to get out of this process as fast as possible. So now I'm going to stop the workflow. So the first thing is check to see if the processing needs to stop. The next thing is if the estimated amount is less than 50K, get out of here. So if the opportunity estimated value is less than 50,000, stop. I know this looks a little junky and clunky, but what this is doing is getting us in and out of this thing very quickly. Also, I can just insert logic around these things without a lot of problems, because the only thing that will disappear if I delete this if statement is this stop. I'm trying to keep as much of the logic to the left as possible. Okay, so I did that. Now the next thing is that now I need to check to see if the account industry equals consulting. and I messed that up. I meant not equals. If it does not equal consulting, get out. So now I stop the workflow. All this just to stop. Normally, if you're a developer, you're going to put this into a massive if statement that's buried up here and there. But what this does is just figures out when I want to get out of this thing as fast as possible and stops. Now, everything below here can be my logic. Now I'd say if the purchase process equals individual, create a task. And then stop. If you notice what I said, if purchase process equals individual, create the task, and then stop the workflow, because I want to stop the workflow as soon as I know I'm done with it too. Then I could go to the next if statement and say, if purchase process equals committee, send the email. I actually execute the other one I just created. So this gives us a way to nest things up in an easier to modify process later on. Okay, because I can insert more logic in here without having to mess with if statements. Because like I said, when you start having a whole bunch of nested ifs, coming back in later on and saying, oh, and add this to the whole mixture, you may not be able to with the way you have that logic spread out. And if you delete that if statement, everything in between goes away. And that's a bad, bad thing. So again, keep it to the left, get in and out as fast as possible, keep the stuff to the left. So now I'm going to go back on over and get to everybody's favorite one, questions and answers. Does anybody have any questions they would like to ask? And while I'm waiting, I do appreciate everybody's time to come take a look at the webinar. We will be holding these about every month, different types. I forget what the next one is. Look up what the next one is. I forgot what it was. Sorry, guys. But we have a whole bunch of them coming. We're doing some on the new Metro look. We're doing some on mobile. So the next one is going to be an intro to the Metro design on April 26th, or sorry, 24th. It'll be a webinar, and basically I'm going to go over that new Metro look that you sort of saw a little bit today. It's really neat, really cool. It's only there for online. Any questions so far?
Okay, we have one question.
All right.
What if you want to start the workflow when something closes, like an activity? Can you do that?
Yes. So when you close an activity, what happens? What you guys need to do is sit back and think. Think for a minute about what you're actually doing. When I close an activity, it updates the activity status as closed. So that is a data change. So I can do workflows on data change. I can do it on created and data change. So what I would do is I'd say, wait for that status to change, and when it does, kick off this workflow. So I just create a workflow that says where status change, and the first thing I say is it closed. If it's not closed, I'd end, because you only want to do this on closed, and then I have all my logic after that.
Okay, we have another one from John. How would you use conditional branches?
Sparingly. You can use conditional branches, but I know there's arguments to use them and so forth. I typically try not to use conditional branches. I typically try not to do anything that I could do with another if statement or to move it to the left, because once you do the conditional branch, it's buried into the logic. You can't insert in between it too easily.
Once you delete the if, it's all.
And once you delete the if, it's all gone. This is back to doing quote unquote bad programming design for good programming, because with workflows, try to keep it to the left as much as possible.
Okay, we had another one on, do we have plans to hold a dialogue webinar? We actually don't have it on the list, so we probably need to.
We can add the dialogue one to the list and get it out there.
Okay, the other one is, will you notify us of new webinars, or should we watch somewhere specifically? So, I mean, sort of.
I think we'll be broadcasting out to everybody. I think since you're already on this webinar, we will be emailing out everybody with new webinars coming up. But just to let everybody know, we have quite a few of them coming up. and they are the 24th of April, we're doing the Metro design. On the 15th of May, we're doing advanced find. On the 19th of June, we're doing case escalation, non-Metro. I do want to point that out. Then on June 20th, which is the day afterwards, we're doing case escalations with the Metro look. Again, if you guys remember what I said about the workflows, they're quite different when you're using the Metro look. On the 24th of July, we're doing a webinar on going mobile, another fun one. The 21st of August, we're doing it on goals. And there's quite a few more going on, like sales processes, security, and reports. We'll try to throw in the dialogue sometime because someone asked about it. 2 people asked about it?
Yep.
All right. And so we'll throw that one out there and get it going as well. Everybody who showed up today will get an email with all these upcoming schedules, along with the PDF of the best practice. And the 2 people that asked about the dialogues will actually send you the dialogue best practice. You know what? Everybody on the team here today will get the dialogue best practice sheet as well. Then the reason I say that is workflows and dialogues are sort of married. They're sort of the same thing. Dialogues are nothing more than workflows with screens that pop up and you can do decision trees from. It's really cool, really neat, but it's still buried into workflow, but there's basically screens added to workflows is what they are.
Okay, here we go. One more.
One more question?
You warn about the Metro look. Can you show some example someday?
Oh, absolutely. When we get into the cases example, and cases or the sales process, that's the reason why we're going to be doing 2 different ones. But examples being is that you have to understand that a lot of times in the past when you hit save, 4 or 5 fields will be getting saved at one time, and you use your workflow to check. It's not that you're going to run in trouble, but you can run in trouble with the Metro because every time you change a field, it's going to update. And what I mean, here's the example is, actually I'll have to get back with you on an example because as I'm trying to articulate it, I can't at the moment because I just need to put my head around it a little bit more for you to get that done. But the problem is that every field, when a single field changes, it kicks off the workflow versus when you hit the save. And that has caused us some issues in the past.
That's it.
Well, if there's no more questions, I'm going to give it another minute. If there's no more questions, again, thank you for attending. Look for the emails. They will be forthcoming. This webinar, I believe I hit record. Yep, this webinar will be recorded and we'll be posting it out there on the website. Thanks a lot.